going to be talking about the March MTR-WFD reticle that was designed specifically for the new Majesta scope from March. This is their March X, the 8 to 80 by 56. It's a high master scope, which means that it has the super ED lenses. It's got WA, which means that it has the wide angle eyepiece, and we're going to talk about that in just a bit. And X is for the shuriken locking mechanism. So let's go through that quickly here. This reticle was designed specifically for F-class competition for this scope, this scope itself. We dimensioned the reticle so that it works for an F-class target at 1,000 yards, or actually at 600 or whatever, but at 80x and 40x. Okay. At 80x, some of the cues and everything fit properly on a very specific size, and at 40x it's the same thing but at a different size. So we're going to be talking about the differences here in a minute. The main goal of this reticle also was to take advantage of the very wide field of view that is provided by the Majesta and its wide angle eyepiece. It's 25% larger than regular scopes, which actually translates to 50%, 56% more field of view at the target. The reticle also adapts to the conditions for wind and mirage, and we will just go through that very quickly. And we try to keep it simple and elegant so that we don't have clutter and a lot of other stuff on there, just very simple stuff. And the main thing is also that you're able to stay on target with the reticle, using only the reticle, and not have to dial the scope while you're shooting a competition or a string especially. So this is the scope itself, the brand new scope. You can read the documentation about it. It's available at the website, and these are all the things that are on there. This is the new finish that they have. It's going to be dark gray with black controls and knobs. Looks very nice. This is another view of it. I want to take and draw your attention to the dials here. You can see that the on the windage, you're going to have the right and left field corrections are built in, and it helps old people like me to be able to stay on the dial properly in the correct direction. And then this is another view of the scope. It will have a logo here underneath. That's going to be a first for the March, but they thought that this scope deserved it. And I think that's about it on this one. This is what the reticle looks like. The red portion is illuminated. It actually looks a little different here. It's going to be much darker when you in real life. So it's just the way we're doing it right now, so that you can see that that's the illuminated portion, but it'll be very black when you're using it during the day. These are the dimensions at 80x, and what we've tried to do is use some of the cues here that we're going to be looking at in a minute, where we actually are dimensioning it to the target at 1,000 yards at 80x. So this is the height of the reticle here. You can see this is the top of the target. This would be the bottom. Sometimes you can see the bottom of the target, sometimes you can't, but you can always see the top. So we have it at 80x, and the next one is at 40x. You will have the top of the target is going to be right. It's going to be this line here. Okay. My name is Denys Beauchemin. I had an idea for a rifle, for a reticle for the new Majesta rifle scope that's being released by Dion in Japan, and I worked with them, working to put together a reticle to match the capabilities of that scope, some very unique capabilities, such as the very wide field of view and the very high magnification, and also the fact that you can actually keep the magnification at maximum, even through bad periods of mirage. So this scope was designed, this reticle was designed to take advantage of that. And we are talking with Tim Vaught, with whom I've had the occasion to present this reticle design and finalize it, and using his expertise and his knowledge of competition, because he actually won the F-class national championship in the US here in 2022 using the Majestascope. And at this point, Tim, why don't I just turn it over to you and you tell me how you would be using the scope in a competition.
Okay, excellent, Denys. Thank you. And first, let me say off by stating thank you, Denys, for the opportunity to contribute with the testing of the scope, and then ultimately collaborating with you and March on helping design a reticle that is really competitively engineered from the get-go for the competitor to get the most out of the new features and capabilities of the scope. And kind of where this, just a quick mindset or philosophy on where this reticle came from. Reticles, acknowledgement that reticles are very much a personal choice, and they're very much an individual flavor for that competitor in terms of what they favor and what they use. Competitors generally pick a reticle that's pleasurable to use or pleasurable to view through, and then they learn how to use the reticle potentially in a competitive environment. This was kind of a different approach. We wanted to summarize the experience of using a half dozen or so different reticles in different competitive environments, both lighting and wind and field of view and eye relief and fast target acquisition, and kind of summarize all those experiences into a reticle that we could break it down match by match and would enable the competitor to leverage all the capability possible out of this new Majestascope in terms of image quality, field of view, and shimmer control. So I've asked Denys in this presentation to try to simulate what this reticle and how to use it in a typical match format for F-class. And for these wind holds, this will be your 1,000-yard kind of scenario. This is a 72-inch target frame, and is it 3 or is it 4 feet spacing between frames, Denys?
You never know. Sometimes I've seen them very tight with 1 foot in between. I've seen others where it was 6 feet in between. You never can tell. Usually it's supposed to be, I think it's 2 feet, but okay. I'm not quite sure. I've been to so many places, and you have as well, and they're always different. You never know for sure. But the important part is that the target is 72 inches by 72 inches. You know, seven MOA.
I guess I just meant for this presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry for this presentation. I believe it is 2.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at it. It looks like right at around 3 MOA is what it looks like.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Okay. Around 3 feet. Yeah.
Okay. So here we're going to use a typical 284 or a 7mm mild Magnum, or say a 300 WSM with 200 or 215 hybrids. And we're going to say we're in match 1, and we're going to say we have a tailwind that's switching from 7 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and the wind is it's light. It's match 1. The optical condition is very stable. The image quality is very clear, and the shooting tempo is very rapid because we're wanting to stack on the X's. We're wanting to get that clean with 14, 15, 16 X's. And so, Denys, if you would simulate moving the reticle through about a 1 to 1.5 ring hold. And what we designed the very center of the reticle for this match 1, and I appreciate you just keep moving that left and right through that fishtail 1.5 ring hold. What we're doing here is we're simulating making rapid shots, quickly getting back behind the optic after looking through our spotter or checking the flag or checking the mirage. And we're basically chasing the spotter, if you will, for match one. And you can see the open center allows your eye to quickly reacquire the reticle in the center of the target. There's an invisible, if you will, X-ring as superimposed by the vertical stadia and the horizontal stadia to perfectly center on the X-ring. You have the highly visible 1 MOA 10 ring. And then you also have the vertical stadia there at the top of the target and the bottom of the target to help you make sure that you're maintaining your water line. And if you needed to make small, slight corrections, you can also use those stadia along with the center of the reticle. So that's the match one, if you will, part of the reticle. Now, we'll say we've got our 200 with 15 on, and now we're going to go into match two. In match two, we look at the conditions, and we look at our abilities and our gun, and we set a match expectation of a 198 with 10. And we see the wind now is somewhere between 5 and 8 mile an hour crosswind from the right. So we're anticipating already, and Denys, if you would here, we're going to move the center of the reticle from about 2.5 out to just inside the edge of black. And I wanted to demonstrate how to use the reticle here for match two. So here, some shooters might even elect to put on some wind bias on their scope. And here you can see with the hold off, with the 1 MOA, the 2 MOA, the 2.5, the 3 stadia, you're not necessarily having to do that. You can quickly recenter the reticle without a wind bias on your scope and not get lost in your knob. Additionally, now because we're having to hold off the X ring or outside the 10 ring, some might be concerned with the vertical placement of the crosshair. Again, those same vertical stadia over the top and bottom of the frame to help us box that in, because now it's match two and the optical condition is less than ideal. We're starting to get some target burble and image shifting. The image quality isn't as good as match one, but it's still really, really good. The Majesta does a really good job, or the prototype that I shot, of controlling this. And if we needed to, we now can use the area that Denys refers to as the wings, the black area out near 9, 7, and 8 MOA out towards the edge on the right. And if you're an F-class competitor, you know not all these targets aren't always stacked perfectly on the vertical plane with each other, but you can see you can now use that stadia and how it crosses the X, the 10, and the 9 ring with helping you maintain your vertical point of aim in these deteriorating optical conditions where you're having to hold off center quite a ways. So that should take us through match two. We got our 198 with 10, and now we want to move into the match three. Now, some of the match threes, and if we could still leave it at 80 for the match three. Some of the match threes, you know, in my head, when it came to designing or giving some input on this reticle, we had basically two kinds of match threes. We had the match three where we were having to hold on the frame, but it was right on the cusp of maybe having to put some wind bias on the scope. And then there's the match threes at Rattlesnake and Byers and Raton and of course Phoenix, where we're required to put a 1.5 or maybe even up to a 4 or 5 MOA wind bias on the scope, or maybe even more in some cases. The problem with holding way off, most shooters have expressed, is again the precision of holding the water line as they hold way out there. And you know, most conventional reticles, you would have to just simply try to slice the X ring in half and manage any burble or mirage. Well, again, the value of this WFD reticle, now we have the upper and lower stadia to help box in the target frame, and we have the wings. And Denys, if you would here, let's simulate that the center of the reticle now is towards the edge of target and maybe even out, splitting the difference between the two targets, about halfway in between. And now you can see you can mechanically put in, right here, Denys holding right around 5 MOA without having to have any wind bias on his scope, not having to get lost, and he can still maintain a very good high confidence vertical displacement with the reticle while having to hold off the target. And the reason I think that this is important, and this will pick up competitors some points, is oftentimes in those violent wind conditions where you have to put on a 3 to 5 MOA wind correction on the scope, oftentimes those wind conditions rapidly change. And now suddenly the wind condition isn't there. And now you move into more of a, or it rapidly changes out the other side, like Denys is demonstrating. You know, with a 4 or 5 MOA wind bias on your scope, and now the wind totally dies out, unless you have high confidence in your wind zero or you have high confidence in the condition, it can be difficult for shooters to interpolate where now to hold without that wind bias being on their scope, or they're having to hold downwind of their wind bias. And for some shooters, this is confusing and can cause errors. You know, here with the wings, we can hold all the way up to 9 MOA and still have high confidence in our correction from to shot and be able to hold a good vertical POI and hold our water line during the competition. And that's really the primary value. Now, this year's Nationals, there was one match where the optical condition degraded to a point where I thought I probably need to reduce the magnification. And so I reduced the magnification, I shot the match, and then after the match, I noted where the magnification was, and it was on 75x. So I think this scope does a very, very good job of shimmer control, but yet there still may be some combination of optical condition, humidity, and range orientation. For example, say shooting on a southern facing range where you may elect to shoot at 40x. And this is, I believe, the calculated field of view for 40x. There may be a competitive reason that you elect to shoot at 40x as well, just because it allows you to view your competitors' targets and maybe the wind trends that they show on their target as you're shooting next to them. But now you can see the reticle readjusts and adapts yet again. You have the vertical stadia, which was just outside the 8 ring at 80x. Now it superimposes on the 72-inch frame. And now the wings go out to the 10 ring. And now the very center of the reticle is a 9 ring. It's likely if the optical condition is so poor that you're at 40x with this scope, you're also having to apply a wind bias, or you're having to hold off. And now those stadia allow you to rapidly address. They basically start right at, I'd have to look at the chart again where that first wind stadia is going to hold off. That would be quarter, that's right at 2 MOA is the first wind stadia outside the center of the reticle. Now that's where we're at with, I think that kind of talks in my mind with the test, with the experience I had with the prototype.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of gives a foundation of where this reticle was designed from. It was kind of purpose designed for F-class competitor to go from match 1 to match 2 to match 3 and adapt with those varying conditions. And then finally you have a match 3B or C where you're having to hold way off the target, and maybe the optical conditions are so poor that you're having to consider dialing back the magnification to 40x.
Yep. And again, I just want to point out, I said it earlier, but maybe it's been forgotten. The middle of the reticle, the red part is going to be very black when you are shooting it during the day. It's just red here, and that's what I had to work with for this this presentation. But it will be very black, so that's not going to be an issue. And now sometimes you don't see it very well, but you will be in real life. Okay.
Yeah,
Very
and
good. Yep.
I hope this was helpful to everybody that watched the video. And if you can't tell, I'm pretty enthused and excited about what this scope can do, and I'm hopeful this reticle receives the positive feedback that I think it will once competitors see the enhanced utility that can come out of the Majesta. in terms of image quality, field of view, and shimmer control. It really needed a reticle that allowed you to leverage all three of those for the highest performance.
And the fun thing is that March actually elected to or agreed to have an F-class reticle. This is a first in the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kudos to March to be brave and bold and stick their neck out and make a reticle for our discipline. I applaud them for that.
yeah. I was so happy when they said, yeah, we want an F-class reticle, because they recognize the F-class shooters, and they thought it was a great idea. So thank you. Okay, thank you, Tim. I'm going to